One of my viewers asked me to post the recipe of Turkish flat bread, also called Turkish Bazlama bread. And now I know why. Because this is hands down the most delicious bread I've ever eaten. The taste and the texture blew me away. It is soft and fluffy and stays that way even after the bread cools down. I have made these breads so many times, and in this video I'm going to share 6 different tips by which your bread is going to puff up and be soft and fluffy every time you make it. Let's get started. To a big bowl, add half a cup of lukewarm water, not too hot and not too cold. Next, add 2 teaspoons of white granulated sugar, which is the food for our yeast. Add 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Stir that for a bit so the sugar dissolves in water. If you're a new viewer, welcome to my channel. I post exciting recipes every week, so do consider pressing the subscribe button. Now we are going to let the yeast bloom for 10 minutes. And you'll know when the yeast is growing and is nice and happy when it becomes foamy like that. If your mixture hasn't formed little bubbles or turned frothy at all, you probably need new yeast, so don't proceed with the recipe. Next, we'll add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour or Maida, half a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of plain unsweetened yogurt that is at room temperature, and lastly, 2 tablespoons of olive oil. That's it. Now let's start kneading the dough. The dough feels slightly dry, so I'm adding just a tablespoon of lukewarm water and that should do it. Keep in mind that the consistency of the dough should be slightly sticky and wet. You're going to be able to knead this dough really well when you add just another tablespoon of olive oil, and then it's going to come together and form this beautiful soft dough that balls up like that. I also rub some olive oil on the walls of the bowl so when the dough expands, it doesn't stick too much to the bowl. Now we're going to cover this with plastic wrap or just a lid, and we're going to place it in a warm place and let the dough expand for 1 hour at least. It's a cold day today, so I covered the bowl with a warm towel, and 1 hour later you can see that the dough doubled in size. Next, we are going to portion the dough. Sprinkle some dry flour on your work surface, and we are going to gently take the dough out of the bowl. We don't want to punch it or knead it because we want to preserve all those lovely air pockets that have formed. I'm very gently trying to shape it like a log so that I can divide that into 4 equal portions. Next, we'll get ready to form a smooth ball out of the portions that we made. Make sure to have some dry flour so the dough doesn't stick to your fingers. We'll pull the circumference of the dough inwards to form a nice smooth ball like that. You've probably noticed that I have not kneaded the dough the entire time. I'm working with it very gently because we want those air pockets for the bread to be very, very soft. For more tips, make sure to watch till the end of the video. Here are our 4 almost equal sized balls. We are going to cover them up and let them rest for 10 minutes so that any gluten that has formed is going to relax. Now let's get ready to roll out our first dough. While you're rolling one dough, make sure to keep the others covered up so that they don't dry up. Sprinkle some dry flour on your work surface, and we are going to try to press it and expand it into a circle just like we do with pizza. And towards the end, you can use your rolling pin and try to spread it out like almost an 8 to 10 inch circle. The thickness should be approximately half a centimeter. And now we are ready to place this on a pan that's been preheated for 5 minutes on medium-high heat. After 25 to 30 seconds, you're going to see these little bubbles coming up. Like that. At this point, we want to turn it over and wait for 30 seconds. So let's start counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. And now turn it over again and let the magic happen. You see. There. And that is how sweet success looks, my friends. Honestly, it's easier to turn it over with your fingers, but be careful, it's hot. Let it cook on this side for another 20 to 30 seconds. Hey, are you liking the recipe? Then show me by pressing the like button. So our amazing bread is ready. As you make one bread at a time, cover it up in a cloth so it stays soft and moist and warm. And while it's still warm, you could slather butter on it. This is a giant piece of butter that I'm using. You can also rub some olive oil with a sprinkle of salt and some chili flakes or chopped coriander leaves or chopped parsley. It's delicious anyway, whether or not you have any topping. The best part of this bread is that it stays soft even after it cools down, so you can make it ahead of time for your dinner parties and relax. Alright, now time for 6 tips so your bread turns out soft and puffs up. Tip number 1. Make your dough with plain unsweetened yogurt instead of milk. Milk works as well, but yogurt will make your bread softer and taste better. Tip number 2. The consistency of your dough should be super soft. It's going to feel a little wet and sticky in the beginning, but as soon as you add a little more oil, the dough is going to come together and you're going to be able to knead it really well. If your dough is hard, your bread will turn out like a pizza base. Alright, tip number 3. Don't knead the dough after it has fermented. Once your dough has doubled in size, we want to preserve the air pockets and not knead it any further. Also, when you're rolling out the dough, gently press it with your fingers and use your rolling pin at the very end to make a flat circle shape. Tip number 4. Make sure that the dough balls and the rolled out dough are smooth and without any cracks or tears. This tip is extremely important for your bread to puff up. Let me quickly show you what happens if there is a small hole or a crack in your rolled out dough. As you can see, the bread is starting to puff up, but it's not puffing up all the way through because there's a little hole on the side through which the air is escaping. Can you see that? Oh well, so make sure that you roll out the dough smoothly. Tip number 5. Preheat your pan for 5 minutes on medium-high heat so that the air inside the bread expands and it puffs up. Low heat doesn't work very well. And the very last tip to keep your bread nice and soft is to cover it in a cloth as soon as you take it off the pan. Hey, let me know if these tips were helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and I hope you try making this amazing bread. I had it with mutton curry the other day and it was fabulous. So, alright my friends, that's all for today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you see what you're missing out? Make sure to subscribe and press that bell icon so the next recipe comes straight to you. If you're on any of these different social media sites, I'm going to be waiting to say hello. And if you want to skip all my blabbering, you can get written recipes from my blog. All the links are in the description. So, alright my friends, see you next week. Bye-bye.